Third time is hopefully the charm. This is the third time I've tried to do this live stream this evening. My gremlins and my computer are just they're doing the tango in my computer, I think. So hopefully I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to find me again for the third time. Let's see. All right. So hopefully you guys can find me now. I'm going to give you an extra minute because I know this is the third time I've tried to go live in the past 5 minutes. Hopefully it's working right now. For those of you who are watching the replay, please let me know in the comments section that you're watching the Facebook, all the algorithms on me. So it helps me see watching the show. It also helps me capture any questions that those of you who are watching the replay might have. All right, guys, those of you who are jumping on board, if you could please and let me know if you can see me and if you're watching me from Facebook or my YouTube channel. All right. Hey, Mark. Okay, good. So you're catching me from the Facebook page. Good. I don't know, Mark. Something is just kind of. Mark, you're watching me from my Cosi? Awesome, David. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you, guys. No, something screwy just happened when I was trying to go live and it just wouldn't go live. So some people were having a little trouble finding me. Facebook changed a few things, guys. Ooh, Jill is just jumping right in with the questions, and I love that. Jill, we're going to give people just another minute or two to find me. On and off. Wonderful. Oh, it looks like my internet connection is pretty not great. Okay, Felicia, thank you for letting me know. Guys, it is telling me my internet connection is not fantastic, and there's not a whole lot I can do about that right now. Hopefully things will start to smooth out. All right, guys, if you don't mind just kind of giving me feedback throughout the show about the internet connection, and also if you guys can watch me from Facebook. Not sure what's going on tonight. Really glad this is just us this evening. You're using Facebook and you're fine. Sandra, hey, Sandy, thank you for joining in. Get a coat hanger. Thank you, Mark. Would you come hold the coat hanger for me so I can get better reception? All right. Guys, I'm sorry, one last question. Those of you who are watching me through Facebook, are you watching me through the Cosi Belloso page or the Cosi Talks page? I think that might be part of what the problem is. If you guys don't mind taking a look on your screen and see if I'm popping up on my Cosi Belloso page or the Cosi Talks page. David's all laughing. Okay, so David, both of you Davids are seeing me fine. Okay, guys, you're watching me through Cosi Talks. Okay, so again, I think it's just a little bit of an internet blip. My apologies, guys. There's really not a whole lot I can do about that, but we're just going to keep moving forward and hopefully other folks will be able to find me. No identification. Mark, can you kind of detail me on that, but about the no identification part? I'm a little frustrated because I know there were a couple of new people who were trying to find me on the show tonight, so I want to be sure that everybody can find where the show is. Okay, so Sandy, you're able to see me through Cosi Talks. Thank you, guys. Guys, we're just going to go ahead and get started, and just hopefully everybody else will be able to find me throughout the show. So for those of you who are watching me for the first time, welcome. It's not usually quite this screwy. My name is Cosi Belloso. I'm a physical therapist, amputee specialist here in Tampa, Florida. I've been a PT now for a little over 19 years, and my passion is working with the limb loss community. So usually the show goes a little bit smoother when it comes to going onto the live stream, but we are just going to keep going and rolling forward. All right, so I'm going to start with Jill's question, which I think it was back up here. Okay, so Jill asks, when you go to a new prosthetist, does he start from scratch and does insurance pay if you switch doctors? That is a really good question, Jill. If I do have any of my prosthetists on board this evening, I'd love to hear from them about this. When it comes to insurance and things like that, I will admit I am not the expert because this is obviously not something that I do in my own practice, is billing for insurance componentry. I do know that there are cases, Jill, where the relationship is not working out between patient and prosthetist. And the patient has to make that decision to go to a new prosthetist because things are just simply not working out. So, I have had that happen on occasions with my patients, with some of my viewers, where they just simply had to switch prosthetists, right? So in that process, the new prosthetist has to examine the prosthesis that is made, determine if it's a sound prosthesis, and if not, start the process again of either making a new socket or perhaps new componentry. So my understanding is if the new prosthetist can justify, meaning they can show that there is a medical need to replace the socket because it's not fitting properly, to replace componentry with componentry that is more suited to a person's lifestyle and mobility. I have heard that happen successfully. But again, it's one of those where you have to be very careful in the documentation process, Jill. If you switch doctors, I don't see that as a problem. Basically, the doctor's role when it comes to the prosthesis is they just kind of sign off on the prescription. That's basically their role when it comes to the prosthesis. Sometimes, let me take that back. The doctor is in charge of, he or she is supposed to be the one who turns in the K-level form, at least in the area where I work. The prosthetist and I will submit paperwork to the doctor so that the doctor can fill out the K-level form. So that's usually the role that the doctor plays when it comes to obtaining the prosthesis. So I hope that answers your question, Jill. Hang on, let me go through here. Yeah, it's weird. I know some people couldn't find me on Cosi Talk. So guys, Facebook changed up how the business pages are. Now I have different accounts and it's very confusing. So Facebook changed up that algorithm this last week. And obviously there's something going on with the connection. So guys, I truly appreciate you guys being patient and looking for me. Yes, Jim, I'm glad you got me on YouTube. Hey, comadre, how you doing? Where is my flower tonight? Oh, I forgot to put on my flower tonight, Mark. All right. So guys, I do have another question here. And this is a question from Jill. Jill sent this question in and she said, her application to Medicare as a K3 was denied. Okay. And she's appealing, but she's not sure if they are going to, approve of the devices and things that are going on. Hey, compadre. So guys, when it comes to insurance denials on prosthetic devices, this is something that I will be the first one to say it is beyond my scope. As a physical therapist, we're not the ones who order these devices. So we're not in it day in and day out of trying to figure out how to get these devices approved. I do assist a lot of my local prosthetists when it comes to justification for these prosthetic devices. So sometimes I'll get called into a prosthetist office to administer functional outcome tests to show that a particular individual is a K2 or a K3 or a K4. So that's usually my role as a physical therapist in terms of how to help get approval for these prosthetic devices. But a lot of times these get denied. So my secret weapon, my not so, well, it's not secret because I'm going to let y'all know about her, is Julie Conley. So I met Julie a couple of years back when I had Blatchford on the show. They were a sponsor for me back in 2020. And Julie Conley came on the show, an absolutely beautiful individual. She told us her story about limb loss, and she also told us about how her insurance denied her the ability to get the Elan, which the Elan is the microprocessor hydraulic ankle that Blatchford makes. And this was really upsetting for her because when she put on the Elan and she was walking, she noticed immediately the change of quality of life it would provide for her, right? So Julie has experience in the field of insurance. So she knew how to address the denial. She knew who she had to go to. She knew how to escalate as needed and who to escalate to, right? And she knew how to get this approved, and she had to take it to the tippy top. I mean, she had to put herself physically in front of a board and explain why she needed this device. It was incredible. And you guys can watch this interview. If you go back to my Facebook archives, you'll see this. In 2020, there's a video with her. So she created a nonprofit organization. It's called Amp You Up. And I'm going to put that right now in here because it's just such a phenomenal resource. Okay, so it's called ampuup.org. And the name of the angel who runs it, her name is Julie Conley. And guys, I've referred several of you to her from the show. I've referred a few of my local patients, and she really does amazing work. It's not to say that she can guarantee getting your device approved, but if there's anybody who knows insurance and how to guide you through that process to hopefully, get that approved, this is the person you want to talk to. And it's interesting. She definitely has a respect in the community. The people that know her really, truly respect her because of her knowledge and how she helps people. So there's a couple of you here that I know you have sought her advice and have had some success. So guys, like I said, this is something that is way beyond my scope in terms of how to get insurance to approve some of these devices. I just know little bits and pieces here and there, but this is someone who is offering her time to provide this service. So highly encourage you, if you are thinking of getting a new device, especially, and I will say this, she has mentioned, if you can talk to her before you submit the approval, obviously that it makes the process a lot easier. Alberis, thank you for joining us this evening. Hey, Phil, Saskatchewan. Oh, having a beer. Awesome. All right, guys. So I think I've got some of you on board, guys. Those of you who joined me a little bit late, Facebook is just being a little screwy with its algorithm. So I do appreciate it. And those of you who are watching this evening, again, Facebook changed things, so it's making it more difficult for me to share my content as a business page. So if you all could please share this video to your Facebook support groups, it would greatly, greatly help me. So thank you. And those of you who are watching the replay, please hit replay in the comment section and tag me if you have a question, because like I said, it'll be a lot easier to get back to it. All right. So here's another question that I actually picked up from one of the support groups, because this is a question I get quite often, and it actually relates a lot to my show from last week. How many of y'all watched my show from last week? The suspension show with Ronnie Dixon from Prosthetic Orthotic Associates of Tennessee. Show of hands, who was there for last week's show? And my internet connection stinks this evening. That's just, it's just one of them days, just one of them days. Mark was there. Marianne was there. There's Marianne. Patricia was there. Thank you, Patricia. All right, guys. So last week, Felicia was there. David was there. Wonderful. Okay, so last week, if you didn't watch the show, all right, we talked about suspension systems, and it was the first time I had ever done a show on suspension systems, which I know is weird because I've been doing the show for 4 years. You would think by now I would have done one, but I hadn't, mainly because that's part of the prosthetic componentry that sometimes throws me for a loop. So I was kind of waiting to have someone on the show that was just really, really knowledgeable on suspension systems. And as those of you who watched the show last week, Ronnie has it in spades. Right? So this next question is closely related to that. Andrea got through 50% of the replay. Jill was watching the repeat. Thank you, guys. Hey, Ashley, what's going on? Oh, Mark's like, one of the best shows ever. That's a big claim there, Mark. Thank you. So this question I picked up from the support group says, I recently got my practice prosthetic and have my new leg next week. I'm a below the knee amputee, and I'm curious, this practice leg is heavy and kind of bulky to me. Will my new one be like this as well? And this person puts, this sucker weighs almost 10 pounds. Not really digging it. Am I supposed to put all my weight on it? So there's a lot of questions here, but first I do want to address the weight. This is probably one of the most surprising things that I hear from my patients when they come in with a brand new leg, is they say it feels so heavy. And many of them are surprised to hear that the prosthesis actually weighs a lot less than what their anatomical leg used to weigh. Right? Because you're holding it in your hand, you're like, dear heavens, this feels like a lot. And then you put it on and it feels like a ton of bricks. Okay. So that's actually a very normal sensation to feel that as a new amputee wearing your prosthesis for the first time. Okay. So here are things to consider. Definitely, and this person says, am I supposed to be able to put all my weight on it? Definitely, yes. Yes. And even if you have what's called, she calls it a practice socket, we call it a check socket. If your prosthetist allows you to take your check socket home to trial it out, which they should, in my opinion, they will be reinforcing the bottom of that check socket. So that's where that extra bulk might be coming from. So it's going to look a little clunky, a little bulky, right? But the whole point of that is for you to take it home, practice it, and give your feedback to the prosthetist. So yes, you are supposed to be able to put your entire weight even into a check socket. You're not going to go jumping around like Tigger on it, right? Because we don't want to crack it, but you should be able to do your normal daily activities, okay? That sensation of the heaviness of the socket, if the socket is fitting well, that heaviness should improve. Okay. The reason why it feels heavy is obviously it's not your anatomical body. It's something that is attached artificially to your body, and it's being attached through a suspension system, right? And we discussed this all last week, all the different kinds of suspension systems, right? And those of you who are listening carefully, right, you heard Ronnie and I both say a suspension system is something to help hold that socket on, right? Some of the suspension, a lot of the suspension is provided through the actual shape of the socket, right? And then you have other secondary suspension systems to help, okay? But a big common mistake that sometimes we see is when the suspension system is being used to kind of fix the problems of the fit of the socket. Okay. So if the actual fit of the socket is not good and snug and comfortable, then you're going to have problems with the suspension and keeping that leg on. And then that's going to lead to problems such as the leg feeling heavy. Does that make sense, guys? All right. So if you think about it, the heavier your leg feels, and this is after the initial process of getting used to wearing your leg, going to your physical therapist, reestablishing that sense of proprioception in your physical therapy treatments, right? And if that leg is still feeling heavy and it doesn't feel like it's getting any better with the weight, then it's time to have that conversation with your prosthetist, right? And asking them, you know, is the suspension really doing its job right now? Is this leg being put on properly? Right? Is there perhaps something within the alignment or in the friction or something with the foot going on, something that makes that leg feel heavy and clunky after a while? Hey, Jim. Well, I appreciate, Jim, you sticking around. Right, guys? So when it comes to a socket feeling heavy in a beginner user, that's not something unusual. When someone who's an experienced user tells me they're still feeling heavy with their socket, they're still feeling like their leg is too heavy, okay, then I start looking at other issues. I start looking to see, is the suspension done properly, right? Is that socket on snug, or is it loose and not really stable there? Less muscularity. Yes, Mark. So obviously, if the person has weakness, their leg is going to feel heavy as well. So that's why, you know, usually if a patient comes in to me and say, oh, my leg feels so heavy, I say, okay, let's work for a little while and let's do the treatments and let's see what's going on, right? And then over the course of time, we're going to reevaluate that sense of heaviness of the prosthesis. As you become more efficient with using it and more efficient with your gait pattern, it should feel lighter over the course of time. So yes, Denise, I know you were just like, really? It weighs less than my anatomical leg? Yes, your anatomical leg weighs a whole lot more than your prosthetic device. Even some of our heavier prosthetic devices that are out there. I think currently the heaviest one out there is, don't quote me on this one, I think it's the Power Knee by Oser. Right? It's a fairly, it's a heavier knee, but it still doesn't weigh as much as your anatomical leg does. Right? A lot of people are very surprised to find that out. So I thought that was really cool. So guys, I want to share. So a couple of weeks ago, those of you who are following me, especially on Instagram, I'm able to post a lot better videos on Instagram. I had the honor of taking a trip to a province in Guatemala, which is called Zacapa. And I took my daughters, my two daughters, and one of their friends with me to Guatemala for a week. And we went with the Range of Motion Project. How many of you guys have heard about the Range of Motion Project? Show of hands. They're also known as ROMP by their initials. Right. So the Range of Motion Project has actually been around for 17 years. They're pretty well established. They have a clinic in Guatemala, which is the one that I visited, and one in Ecuador, in Quito. Right. So we had the chance to go there to work for a week, and it was beyond spectacular. I had done a medical outreach trip when I was a fresh graduate from PT school, and I didn't know what in the world I was doing. But I loved the work, and I was so happy to be able to go and do another trip like this. And it was myself, my two daughters, and in this particular group, we had another physical therapist from Mexico, an absolutely lovely, lovely individual. And we had about 16, a group of 16 mix of prosthetist students and residents, and then 2 licensed prosthetists. So it was quite a large group. And we treated 24, I think was the count. 24 individuals, and the prosthetist made prosthetic devices, and myself and Alejandra, we were there burning the midnight oil, teaching everybody how to walk in 2 days with these prosthetic devices. And it was probably one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had in my life. And I do want to, you'll hear me referencing this a lot because there's so much, guys, as a clinician, as a mother, and just as a human being that I learned from this trip. And I have a lot of wonderful videos. It's nice because when I treat my patients here in my clinic, I'm so focused on my patient treatment that a lot of times my patient will leave the clinic and I go, oh, I should have taken a video of what we were doing or a video of their gait because it would have been a great example. And so unfortunately, I don't have a lot of videos of my patients, but because we were in Guatemala and one of my daughters, her responsibility was to film a lot of what was going on, I have a lot of wonderful videos. So over the next few months, I'll be able to show you guys examples of some of the training techniques that I use with my patients, which I'm excited. But wanted to tell you guys about this one patient who came in. And then this is one of those, I can't make this up. Can't make this up. So this gentleman's name is Señor Caño. And, he gave me permission to share his story and all that kind of good stuff. So Señor Caño comes in. He must be between 72, I think he's about 72 years old. And he had his amputation 25 years ago. Now, as a back note, people in Guatemala, right, they speak obviously Spanish, and Spanish is actually my first language. But they also speak, many of them, a dialect, Mayan dialect, right? And I always forget the name of the Mayan dialect of what it's called. And a lot of times they'll mix the Spanish in with the Mayan dialect, especially if they live up in the more remote areas. So Señor Caño, he was from one of these remote areas. He traveled 12 hours to get to the clinic. So he's telling me and Alejandra, my colleague, the story of how he had been burned in his work. He works in the fields. And he had to amputate his own leg with a machete. Now, guys, he's telling me this story, and I'm looking at Alejandra. She is from Mexico, and I look at her and I go, did we just hear correctly what he said? And she's like, yeah, he cut off his own leg. And I go, okay, so there was not a loss in translation with the Mayan dialect here. He cut off his own leg to survive. So he obviously survived this ordeal, and he had a revision surgery somewhere down the line. And then he made his own prosthesis. Right? Isn't this amazing? This is the prosthesis that he came into the clinic when he came to see us. This is the prosthesis he made 25 years ago. Okay, guys, not making this up. Check it out, right? This is solid wood, what you're looking at right here. And this basically feels like PVC piping, this white part right here. And if you look inside, there's the wood. And then this leather strap was his suspension. This went over his knee. So he told us that he had been using this leg for the past 25 years and continuing to work in the fields. They call it working in el campo, right? 10 hours a day. Like, this guy was a beast. He was amazing. And he just, and the thing is, when he's telling us this story, he has this joy just coming out from inside. And we're just sitting there open mouthed. And he said, look, I can even run. And there's a video, guys. There's a video of he and I running in the clinic, and he's wearing this leg. Like, it wasn't his new leg. He was wearing this leg. And he's running up and down the clinic and just showing us everything that he can do. Right. And in the process, I put this up there. He tells me, the person who puts his hand out in this country and is not willing to try and work and overcome their obstacles, well, that man is and I won't say the word that he said because it's a bad word in Spanish, but that was this man's spirit. Right. So, what's interesting is that he was walking up and down, up and down, up and down. And I'm just sitting there going, oh, dear heavens, after 25 years of using this leg that he made for himself, is he going to even want to use the new prosthesis? Right? I see so often in my own patients that sometimes even when the prosthesis isn't fitting well, people are sometimes hesitant to get that new prosthetic device because they're not sure if that's going to be a better fit or not. Right? And the fact that he made this, this was not obviously a conventional prosthesis. So this was going to be something completely and totally different for him. So they casted him, and 2 days later, he comes back into the clinic. And I got to hand it to these prosthetic students, man. They did a beautiful job. They did a beautiful, beautiful job, and they made him a wonderful below the knee prosthesis, right? And with this particular leg, he had to wear and he showed us, he had like 12 different rags. And that's what they were, guys. These were rags that he had just acquired over the course of these 25 years and used as socks, basically to fill in the space, right? And it took him a solid 7 minutes to put this prosthesis on, to put all those rags on and put all those everything on. So it was a very big surprise to him that all he had to do was put on a liner and a socket, and he was done. Right? That was the first big shock to him, is that it took him less than a minute to put his new leg on. And thankfully, they had given him a very nice foot. They gave him a Freedom Innovations or Prodi, or I don't know what it's called nowadays. The Maverick is a very, very nice foot. And I was so happy to see that, because if anybody needed a good foot, it was this gentleman right here, right? So he starts walking up and down. And guys, I have never seen this in my career. I have never seen someone adapt to such a dramatic change in their prosthetic device so smoothly. So smoothly. And the physical therapist, the other physical therapist, she and I were just sitting there watching, and we had tears in our eyes, because we're just like, this is amazing. It's amazing to watch this. And we were like, wish we could take credit for this, but this is all him. This is all him, right? And he's walking around this prosthetic device beautifully. And, he turns around and he looks at us. And at the time when I saw his prosthesis on the inside, I was thinking, oh boy, I'd love to have that prosthesis, but I didn't want to feel presumptuous in asking him for it, because to me, this was something that he created. And I only imagine that he must have been very attached to it. So I didn't say anything. I had all that bottled up inside, right? And the gentleman who brought him to the clinic turned to him and said, Señor Caño, you cannot go back to using that old leg. And Señor Caño just looked at him and he said, you know what? You're right. That leg is in the past and it needs to stay here. So at that point, I raised my hand and said, can I give it a home? And he gifted me his leg. And I got to tell you guys, to see him, just the way he approached his life in general, and to see him be able to, let go of his past and be able to just move on and accept the gift that he had been given of the new leg and just say, okay, time to go on and keep living my life. Beautiful experience. Beautiful experience. So I just wanted to share that one with you guys. And this leg to me is just, I will keep this leg forever and treasure this. This is a treasure right here. Yes, Alberi, Señor Caño is definitely the definition of a superhero. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can't wait to see him. I really hope I'm been plotting my way of how I can get back over to that clinic ever since I got back 2 weeks ago. So hopefully that won't be the last time I get to see him. So I just wanted to share that story. There were so many stories, guys, and you're going to hear me sharing these stories a lot. There's so much that as a clinician I learned. And those of you, I have quite a few clinicians listening in on my show nowadays. And I would highly, highly encourage you. Even if you just do one trip in your entire career, just take one trip. And again, the Range of Motion Project, I think, is a phenomenal organization, very well organized. Their team is absolutely wonderful and a joy to work with. To just do one trip like this. And it's interesting. I've been doing this, I've been in healthcare for well over 20 years. And I learned so much as a clinician on this trip. My biggest concern was, well, crikey, I usually spend 4 to 6 months with a patient getting them to walk. I have 2 days max, and I have to teach 23 patients how to walk. And thankfully, I had my colleague with me, and she and I were back and forth with patients. But it really puts a challenge to your clinical skills. And it's a wonderful challenge. It's a wonderful challenge, and it makes you grow as a clinician. And yes, I had the ability to take my 2 daughters with me, which I cannot tell you as a clinician and as a mother how wonderful it was to be able to provide that experience for my children. And I know that's not an experience that everybody can have. But again, if you're a clinician and you have kids that are in the teenage or even young adult stages, give them that experience. It's a wonderful experience to have. So Stephen, to answer your question, he says, am I going to have my daughters work in the physical therapy or prosthetist field later in life? Not necessarily, Stephen. My whole point behind this trip was to for my daughters to have that eye-opening experience, going to a third world country and seeing this is what poverty really is. And we saw some very strong, things in Zacapa. And my daughters are 15 and 14, so they're old enough to know about a lot of the problems in the world today. And, but seeing it right there in front of them was certainly an eye opener for them and for me as well. And, for them to see the struggle there. And I have to say that as a mother, I've never been so proud of my kids because they jumped right in and they started helping with the translation. They started helping with patients. They started helping with some of the admin work that had to be done. So for me, it was showing them that third world, giving them that job experience, because they were given some pretty heavy duty responsibilities that even I was like, oh boy, hope they don't screw that up. But they did wonderfully, so it was just kind of real world job experience. Like, okay, you are doing healthcare administrative work and you are helping them and you have to answer to the boss man if anything goes wrong. And then using their, Spanish and having to flex those muscles. So absolutely wonderful experience all around. And you'll have to forgive me because I will be referencing this trip a lot. There were just so many amazing stories and individuals that I met. And I feel like their stories need to be told. Yeah, because I think we gain so much when we hear these stories. Tom, so good to have you here. Yes. No. And it was really, truly a joy. And again, I can't say enough nice things about the Range of Motion Project team. So if any of them are listening right now, thank you guys for letting us have this experience. And I cannot wait to go back. All right, guys. So let's move on. This is something that I want you guys to answer for me, right? So I'm reading the Journal of Orthotics and Prosthetics. I have that subscription and I enjoy reading the research articles in there. And yes, Mark, I will be sharing videos. Literally, Mark, I have over 100 videos and I have to upload them to my computer. I haven't done that yet. But if you guys head over to my Instagram, Cosi Talks page, you'll see a lot of those videos that I was able to make there. You'll see some of the kids that we were working with. You're going to see Señor Caño. There's videos of him running and me trying to keep up after him as well. But yes, I will be posting videos mainly because there's a lot of great techniques that we were able to put on video of the different ways we do gait training, especially for my above the knee amputees. So yes, I will be sharing those videos hopefully in the next few weeks. So this article I read in the Journal of Orthotics and Prosthetics, it talked about fall prevention, right? And is there a correlation between a fall prevention program and a person having a less incident of falls. Right. And it's funny, sometimes when I read these research articles, I'm just like, well, duh. Yeah. If you have fall prevention program in a patient's treatment, then, they're going to have less falls. But we need to do these formalized research because basically when it comes time to show insurance, right? That's one reason. If we're showing insurance that there is actual documented peer reviewed research proof of this, then we can justify having more treatment, right? So that's a big reason I love to read these research articles because it allows us to do that. And also sometimes we can have some surprising, twists and plot twists, I call them, with these research articles where we think it's going to go one way and takes another direction, right? So in this particular article, it was, and I don't have the exact numbers right in front of me because the article is somewhere in the other room. But it was saying that there unfortunately was not a whole lot of fall prevention treatment going on in the recovery process of the amputees that they evaluated. And it went on to say, and it talked a lot about programs like using programs such as Tai Chi to work on fall prevention, which I thought was kind of interesting. I kind of looked like a Monday morning quarterback reading this article. So I'm just like, why aren't you talking about physical therapy? And finally, the article gets to physical therapy. And it just kind of says that the people who were interviewed for this particular research, if they received physical therapy, very few of them received fall prevention treatment in their physical therapy treatment. Now that got me mad. Because I think in my profession, we need to do a lot better. So guys, I want to hear, Marianne's already jumping the gun for me. Thank you, Marianne. I want to hear from you guys. How many of you received fall prevention? Whether it was from your physical therapist, your prosthetist, a Tai Chi instructor, who, if you received fall prevention, yes or no? So I'm already seeing Steven says my fall prevention was karaoke. That's good, kids. I like that. Hey, Rhonda, glad you could make it. Rhonda says no. All right, guys, come on. Let me hear from you. Nope. Patricia says nope. Mark says nope. Yeah. That makes me very, very, that makes me upset. And I'm not, at first I was upset reading the article because I'm thinking about the authors and I'm like, why aren't they talking about physical therapy? That's what we do. And then I get to the middle part of the article and I'm like, oh, well, they're not talking about physical therapy because some of us as physical therapists are not doing our jobs, right? So first of all, let me just put it out there. I love Tai Chi. Nothing against Tai Chi whatsoever. I actually recommend, that's one of the sports fitness programs, whatever you want to call it, that I recommend to my patients after they finish traditional physical therapy and they want to continue and do something out in the community. Tai Chi, Pilates is another one that I love to recommend, swimming. So I would totally be in favor of people doing Tai Chi as a way to maintain their fitness, coordination, and balance. Love it. Okay. But the person who should be teaching you your original fall prevention is your physical therapist. Okay. So I'm putting my profession right now on the line. I'm on the hook. Okay. And I know the PTs who are out there listening, they're going, it should be the physical therapist. Is it always done? Apparently not. Okay. So what can you guys do? Okay, here, let me read some of these comments that are here. Yeah, a lot of you are saying, nope. Oh, Tom said yes. David said yes. Yay. Felicia says, I'm early in therapy, but we've only discussed teaching me a safe way to fall. Okay, good, Felicia. That means at least your physical therapist has that on their brain right there. Phil says, nope. Steven says, my PT would walk next to me and push me from the side as I walked. Yes. That is a fall prevention treatment strategy, Stephen. Phil says, I was told don't fall. Ha ha. Oh, jeez. Okay, so let's talk about what is a fall prevention program? What does that look like? And again, that can look different for every individual, okay? If I have someone who comes in and prior to their amputation, they were a very high level activity individual, they did sports or they were walking around their community all day or they had a very active job, I'm going to do a very aggressive fall treatment program. I'm going to be teaching that individual how to get up off the floor in the event that they do fall. I try to teach them how to fall. That one's a little bit trickier because sometimes but how to fall in terms of protecting their head, and not just sticking hands straight out, doing like a roll move, okay, if that's possible. The fall prevention side of it comes a lot with balance training, guys. That's a huge part of it. Okay. So if you have a fall prevention program in your treatment, it's a large part of it should be the balance training that you're receiving, right? And it should involve not just the balance of, walking through cones. It should be challenging. It should be walking through cones. Okay. Now close your eyes and try to do movements on the balance board, challenging all the different senses to really, really hone your balance and proprioception. Okay. In some cases, if I have, the stumble stance recovery that comes with the microprocessor knees, then I try to put my patient in a safe environment and let them test that out. Let them try stubbing their toe, their prosthetic toe, and feeling what that feels like when that stumble stance recovery kicks in with the microprocessor knee and how they can catch themselves. Like Stephen mentioned, if I'm walking next to my patient and we're doing some aggressive fall prevention treatment program, I'm going to shove them every once in a while and bump into them the same way as what would happen to them if they're walking in a crowded area in public, right? So yeah, these are things that should be practiced. Another fall prevention strategy would be walking on uneven terrain, right? If you can negotiate uneven terrain, grass, gravel, ramps, curbs, okay, that is all improving your balance, right? So this is everything that should be included in your physical therapy treatment. Now, granted, every individual is different. If you were not very active prior to your amputation, then it either might take you longer to get to that level of high level fall prevention balance, or, it's just going to look a little bit different for you. Okay. Let's see. Was this taught to me in school? You bet it was, Mark. Oh my gosh. Yes. So basically, anybody over the age of 50, whenever I have somebody who's over the age of 50, I'm automatically thinking fall risk. It's just the nature of the beast, guys. As we get older, our balance starts to decrease. And oftentimes, many of my patients are not even aware of how much balance they've lost until I do some special testing on them, and they are just wibble wobbling all over the place. And these are folks with two anatomical legs, right? So fall prevention is something that is very much ingrained into a physical therapist's mindset. Okay. Fall prevention in the hospital, because heaven knows we don't want our patients falling right after surgery, regardless of what surgery they had, right? Fall prevention in rehab center, fall prevention in the home health setting, in the outpatient setting. I mean, it's one of those things that as physical therapists, that is constantly on our minds. Okay. It's in our history and physical. Do you experience falls? How many falls do you experience in a month, in a week, in a day for the severe cases, right? What do you feel triggers your falls? Is there a certain place in your home or in the community where you find that you fall more often, right? So these are all things that we are taught to interview our patient on to try to discover what is the reason behind the fall. So, oh yeah, this is a big one for us. Jim says, interesting that they use belts and such during session, but no instruction for when I'm not in class. Yes. So, we do have those gait belts that we use, and it's basically fall prevention. In the gait belt, it allows us to really be able to control and maneuver our patient during treatment. And obviously we wean our patients off those belts as they become more high level. Okay. So Rhonda says they did have me on a balance on a rolling board, but not falling. And again, guys, this is where the nuances of a fall prevention program can be just a little bit different for every individual. Okay. So just because it's a fall prevention program doesn't mean that you're actually falling. It may not necessarily be appropriate in your case. It's really working heavily on your balance. Okay. That is the fall prevention program. Right. And like I said, in some cases, in some of my more higher active patients, I will be involved of how to get up off the floor in the event of a fall. And my really, really high level individuals, teaching them how to fall if we can do it in a safe way. right? Hey, there's my Julie right there. Folks, there's that angel I was telling you about a little bit earlier today from ampuup.org. So, Julie, your ears must have been burning, and that's why you joined in on the show. So, thank you, Julie. And I do want to extend a public thank you for all the times that you've helped with either my patients or my viewers. So, thank you. Fall recovery program. Yes, that's called a lot of paperwork. Just kidding. So yes, guys, depending on my patient and their level, I will teach my patients how to get up off the floor in the event of a fall. In this research study, it is quoted, amputees do have a higher incidence of falls compared to their two-legged counterparts at the same age. Okay. So at some point in your life as an amputee, there will be a time that you will most likely have a fall. And it's learning how to deal with that and how to recover from that. So Felicia says, so if we just focus on balance, would that be considered the same thing? Yes. But the focus with the balance, Felicia, it's also how your physical therapist continues to challenge you with your balance, right? So, and again, some PTs fall into this trap. Well, they'll just do one or two balance exercises and nope, okay, now we're done. Okay. For me, it's always, how can I challenge my patient more? Right? How can I challenge my patient more? So again, referencing Guatemala, we had very little time to work with these patients. So I basically, by the end of the time, I had a nice little protocol where I was just like, okay, give them this exercise. Too easy? Boom, let's go to the next one. That one's too easy? Boom, let's go to the next one. And we keep giving them the balance exercises until we find the one that is hard for them to do. And that's the one we're going to work on. Okay. Same thing with my patients, guys. I'll start my patients off on a very easy level. And hang on. Of balance. And yes, I'm totally pulling my book out right now. How many of y'all have my book? The Strong Body book? How many of you guys have the book? I hope I see a lot of answers in the comment section. But in this book, I have a section just dedicated to balance, right? And it starts with the phase 1 exercises, right? So phase 1 exercises are the beginner balance exercises. And I encourage people, start with the phase 1. Even if you're already up and walking, you'll be surprised at how many gaps that you can fill in by doing some of these beginner exercises. Good. Mark, I know you got a book. Rhonda's got a book. Dave's got a book. Good. Right? And it progresses from phases 1 to phase 3 balance, okay, where we're doing higher level activity of crossing the legs in and out in a braiding, and we're using weights and doing extra challenges, right? So Stephen says, what about standing on the prosthetic leg alone? Yes and no. So Stephen, I do use that activity, but I would incorporate it with strengthening. So for my below the knee patients, yes, I work a lot on getting them to stand just on the prosthesis because they have the ability to control their anatomical knee and obviously their hip. With an above the knee patient, I use those exercises to improve the hip strength. So I have one exercise in here, it's called tennis ball, where I have the person stand on the prosthesis and then move the tennis ball with the sound foot. Okay. So in that case, yes, they're putting their entire weight into the prosthesis, right? And they have a little bit of support with their hand, but I'm using that more for strengthening of those hip muscles more so. And yes, there's balance involved, but it's more for strengthening and proprioception, right? Marianne says, Michael would not show me how to get up off the floor after I became a double above the knee. He said too much liability. Well, okay. I will say this, guys, when I do have someone who's a bilateral amputee, then yes, I have to make sure that if I am teaching that individual to get up off the floor, that I have a safe environment in which to do it. I don't do that by myself. I'm pretty strong, but not strong enough to lift someone off the floor, completely off the floor on my own. So it's a skill that I just make sure I have an extra pair of hands who can help me and the patient if they get stuck. Because usually the first few times that you try this, you're stuck. You get stuck and you need to be lifted up again. So, I try not to be, I'm kind of tough on my own kind, but I try not to be too hard because I don't know what kind of a setting the person's working in, if they have help or not. So for example, when I worked in the home health setting and the patient, we didn't have any extra pair of hands to help, sometimes I was not able to work on that skill simply because I didn't have anybody to help pick the patient up off the floor. It was just me, myself, and I. So there were some instances where I was not able to teach that skill. So I always try to see it in context. Marianne says, I taught myself. Well, good. I'm glad. Marianne, you seem like someone who'd be able to do that. That does not surprise me. Okay, so I'm just kind of going through these questions, guys. All right. So guys, I have one more. The balance exercises are challenging, but very useful. And again, it's one of those where you don't realize just how much balance you're losing until you try some of these exercises. And I'm trying to, and the person I'm thinking right now is my own father, right? So my dad, ex-military, right? He could probably, he was able to do at age 70. He was beating some of the guys in his office who were in their 40s at doing push-ups. So he's a tough guy, right? And stays in shape, and he goes to the gym. And I remember I saw him walking, and I'm just like, obviously, he's walking independently and everything like that. And I was just like, hey, Dad, do something for me. And I had him do the walk in tandem, right? So some people call it the DUI drunk walk test, where you put one foot in front of the other. He couldn't do it. I mean, this is a man who walked independently all over the place, never had a fall, right? Does a million push-ups and sit-ups and goes to the gym every day. He couldn't walk in tandem. And it surprised him, I think, more than it surprised me. He's like, what happened? And I go, well, Dad, you're 70 years old and you haven't been working on that skill and you've lost it. But the good news is you can get it back. You just got to practice it. But it was just interesting. And as a physical therapist, we evaluate these things. We evaluate because a lot of times we'll pick up on balance deficits that the patient was not even aware of themselves, right? So always an interesting thing. So yes, guys, this is something that you should be having a conversation with your physical therapist, and the physical therapist is the one who should be doing this. Okay. And if your physical therapist is saying, well, we don't do fall prevention programs, that's the time to go find yourself a new PT. Okay. So they should be at least talking to you about it, explaining what is their plan for you for your specific fall prevention program and what that's going to look like. Right. Yes. Thumbs up. All right, guys, I know we had a late start to our evening, but we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And guys, I do again appreciate those of you who stuck around with my software glitches. And as I mentioned, guys, Facebook is changing things around, and it's making it a bit more challenging to share my content. So those of you who are watching right now, if you could please share this show to your support groups. I know there's several people who are trying to find the show tonight, some new watchers, and I don't know if they were able to make it or not. That would really, really, really be helpful. So guys, as always, thank you so much for letting me be a part of your lives this evening. Please do not stop sending me your questions. I'm going to put my email on here. Okay. So for those of you who are new, please know that I am very available to answer your questions. That's the whole point of this show. You can send me your questions directly to that email. I answer all my own emails, and I will be happy to bring that question and information back to you. All right, guys. So as always, thank you for letting me be a part of your lives. I will see you next week. Same bad time, same bad channel.